The next session here is kind of a multi-agency session that'll be led by Pete. So I'm just going to introduce Pete and leave it to him to go through the rest of it. When we talk about customer service and putting the landowner first. So Pete Bauman is the range specialist, I believe is your title with SDSU Extension. We're trying to not make this the Pete Bauman show. So he's going to get involved. But those of you who are also part of this session, feel free to join up here. You got that? Okay.
I need a clicker. Okay, so this is again when we put this whole forum together. So I need Jay, Joe Mayrose, Ryan Marr, Dan Nelson, Jesse. Is Anthony here yet? Yeah, come on up, Anthony. And then Wade Gubrud is our. So Wade, where's Wade? Wade is our landowner that came to us here just a few weeks ago as we were putting this thing together. So this whole thing is an intervention. Just kidding, Wade. No, it's not. The reason we just wanted to make this morning kind of impactful. Several of us are going to share the clicker here through this as we work through this slide. It just piles on what you've already heard, but it was a really cool real life example. Yeah, you might as well just hand them out. And Wade just came through my door on the exact right day at the exact right time. So Wade, I'm going to put you on the spot just for a little bit. Just grab a mic and just introduce yourself. The rest of these guys will get introduced throughout the course of the next couple of days, but go ahead and just introduce yourself and kind of what you're looking for a little bit, and then we'll get into.
Sure. Wade Gubrud. I live up by Gary, South Dakota. My brother John and I purchased this property 7 years ago. I'm an agronomist by trade, but definitely have a passion for conservation as well and understand the value of using the land, what it's best used for. And some of it isn't always for crop production. And like I say, came into this property and it's got a piece that's highly erodible. It was broke before we bought it, and kind of been working and trying to figure out some solutions, what we can do with this for the long term. But due to, I guess, kind of caught in a farm bill gap from when it was broke and being tilled enough years, we just haven't been able to figure out a good option for it right now. So talked to Pete, and this is where I ended up. So.
All right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to kind of walk through this forum. I got to remind us is a reflection of the 2023 private land biologist forum that was held right here in this room in December of 23. Right? Where's Krista? That's correct, right? Yes, and it was just an eye opener. Like, I think we all are pretty energetic yet, but I turned 51 here recently. I don't look as old as Jesse, but. Anyway, God, our jokes just aren't landing this morning, are they? Anyway, but you know, we are now the people that the younger staff really should be looking to for advice and leadership. And the younger staff members really need to keep this train rolling in South Dakota. We are blessed with something in South Dakota that many states do not have, and that's this tremendous partnership. So we're going to walk through this just a little bit. So this is all of the partners that were represented at that forum back in 23. I might even be missing a couple, but I think Krista put that together for me. So one of the things that we did at that, or that they did, is they did a quick survey. How often do you work or collaborate outside of your organization? And so that question was overwhelmingly yes, and that was a lot of young staffers. So I think that we're getting people off on the right foot. I actually can't see those very good. What's the question on there? I'm sorry. Anyway, it's positive. Let's just say it's positive. We had good reaction, good positive feedback from staffers at the forum as to what they were interested in, what they were interested in working with landowners on. So we have a tremendous base here, I guess, is the point of this feedback. Are you interested in hearing from state-level management staff on private lands-related topics and issues? And that's exactly what we're doing here today. Overwhelmingly, yes. I'm going to skip that one. So what does it look like to work together? It's a web. It's a web of conservation organizations. In this case, these are just the ones that we basically threw together for Wade's project that we're going to be talking about today. But any one of them, you can have the landowners in the middle. So these are just some quick and dirty steps. A lot of this is feedback. I've talked to Don a lot. I talked to Wade some. A transplant to South Dakota by the name of Wilbur Reed. Carolyn Eck, we're going to hear a little bit about her projects. We really wanted to include landowners in this building of this forum. And the first thing is just that first one. Initial contact, be a resource, not a salesman. That your logo presentation was perfect. Nobody's got all the answers for any one individual's needs. So then assess those desires just to have a discussion, share ideas, take notes. And then ensure that producer that you're going to be the leader in their team approach. These are just grassland like some of the various goals that we can have, grassland, cropland, or mixed. And that's represented up here today. Wade he's an agronomist. He knows his crop history. He knows his cropping. That may play into his long-term goals. His long-term goals might not just be grass. It might be integrated, and that's where organizations like Game Fish and Parks can come in and help with that integration. So or Every Acre Counts, for instance, we'll hear from that. So when you start building that out to other goals and other programs, the web gets pretty complex. We've seen that represented already today. I'm not gonna hammer that, but each individual end goal harkens back to a multitude of opportunity and the state and level programs. So it's a web. It's a web of opportunity. It's just which fly you're going to catch first. So what's my role in this? That's where we're going to start. We're going to kind of build this out. Wade came to me first. We had a nice discussion. And all he said was, do you know anything about CRP? And I'm like, yep. So that's kind of how things got rolling. I'm like the gateway drug for people. I got no programs, no money. I got nothing at SDSU. It's just a way to kind of get them hooked. And that was his question. He had some initial goals: wildlife, hunting, trees, economic return, and that's represented by the group that's up here now. But I didn't give him a lot of answers. I asked him a lot more questions than I gave him answers. What do you do for a living? What's your family history on the land? How familiar are you with programs? Is there any other land that's connected or that you're considering? And how familiar you are with other options and programs. Wade actually had a history with CRP then they kind of opened that conversation, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But these were his answers. And then we just kind of worked from there. So the final part in question was, would you be interested in discussing this with a larger group? And his answer was a resounding yes. And that led to a meeting of the rest of us. One thing that I did try to bring into all my conversations, and Wade, I totally sniped this off the internet. So this is Wade's family. He doesn't know I was going to show this. Facebook creeping him. But I think it's important to remind, it's when you're sitting across the desk from people like us, I don't think it's always all that comfortable. And when you bring them back to their own family and their own goals and their own objectives, it really enriches that conversation. So anyway, Wade's in the middle right now. This is a meeting that we held at SDSU. Dan had to step out, so I took a picture of Dan off the internet as well. You see, that was Dan in his old job. And this is the point where the bunny has to sit in the back seat and let the big boys play. So these are the people now that have the next level of programs. Jay Hermann thinks of himself as Superman in this. So you're going to start. So you're up next.
I'm up next.
You got a mic? I can click for you, I guess. That'd be easier. But. So these were, I don't know if you can see. You might have to step out, Jay. But these are the things you brought up.
Okay, so when we were talking to Dan that day, I kind of asked him, what was his short-term goals and what was his long-term goals. That was important to me. I wanted to know what he wanted to do within the next 5 to 10 years, and then what does the land, when he's sitting in his rocking chair, what does he want to see on his land? And I think I worded it that way. And he goes, well, I don't know, I kind of like to see that grass and some hunting opportunities and something there for the kids. And so that was what I was kind of looking at. And so then, you know, we kind of started exploring that. But I think setting those goals, and you're going to hear that repeatedly today, setting those short-term goals and those long-term goals and having him decide what that is as the landowner is important. And then we start talking about the soils, because I have to talk about the soils because that's our foundation. And you'll hear that again today too. But, you know, what's going on there now? Why did they break it? Well, we don't know. Probably $7 corn had something to do with it. But soils are important. And so we kind of looked at the soils quick a little bit, and we discussed those. Here it is on the map. You can keep going.
I don't know, you want me to click through them? So this was, you know, you were asking about, so soil history, that's what this is.
Yep. So we kind of figured out sometime between, I think it was 11 and 14, it got broke. And that kind of fell into why CRP wasn't quite working, but it's HEL ground, it's highly erodible land. And so that kind of throws a red flag up in my neck of the woods, so I gotta kind of watch that a little bit. I don't want him losing any more soil than he already's lost due to the conversion. And so now we need to start thinking what we're gonna do to bring that back. And that was our starting point. Am I done talking yet?
I'm trying to figure that out again. No, not quite.
Oh,
So these are
okay.
what- these are the-
So I gave him some alternatives. I said we can kind of go back to like a hay production where we just plant alfalfa and we take the alfalfa off and we sell it off. I believe there was a dairy close by that was looking for alfalfa. Cover crops was another option we talked about, maybe doing some cover crops, grazing cover crops, and then actually going back to a grass type mix where he could graze it or do whatever with it. So, and then we got into the programs. Where can we help them out financially trying to do some of this stuff?
Sorry, this is a little choppy, but we really wanted to do this together. So alfalfa hay, Jay brought that up. Cover crops possibilities, or a combination of both on highly erodible land, that type of thing. So that's what Jay brought to the table initially, or possibly going back into natives, or a combination of several things. Is that fair enough?
Looks good to me.
All right.
All right, so I'm Ryan Marr with the NRCS. I followed up after Jay, and the things I wanted to know from Wade, you know, what are the surrounding land use from neighbors, you know? They can affect you positively and they can affect you negatively, but you need to know who's around you and what they're doing out on the landscape. One example is, you know, if we were to turn this into grass, Wade doesn't have cows. And so maybe he'd be looking at a neighbor that's got pasture right next to it. I think it was to the northwest there. Maybe his neighbor could graze his place if we turned it into grass. The other end of things is from a wildlife standpoint, one of your goals was to maybe increase wildlife. And so I thought on the end of they have pasture to the northwest. There's crop ground all around. What can we do to funnel wildlife through that kind of area, that low area? What are the wildlife not having access to on the neighboring places? So we talked about some shrub clumps, et cetera. The next thing I wanted to know was, since there's water, is there salinity, sodic issues? Something you really got to watch, obviously. It depends upon if you are seeding grass. If there is salinity, sodic issues, it'll greatly affect what you're planting out there. But yeah, we kind of wanted to know where those were on the landscape. You know, those often follow if there's any tiling going on. So I kind of wanted to know the tiling history, wetland maps. You know, if you were doing a grass waterway in another case, you know, that's one that often comes up. You need to know where those tile lines are. You start excavating in the bottom, you clip a tile, it's not going to be good. So, CRP eligibility of marginal areas. Wade was telling me that, you know, it wasn't farmed before on this hillside on the east side there, and there was some erosion coming off of that. He would really like to see that into grass as well as that west side. So we were looking at things like cropping history. Can we get this in through CRP and get grass out there? Also get them a little rental rate there so you can keep up with payments on the land. That's kind of what we're looking there. Okay, and you know, he talked about maybe putting grass back on the tillable acres. Dawn touched on the program that she's entering with Ducks Unlimited, the Ducks Unlimited RCPP grant, where they'll help pay to put back those tillable acres to grass. And while they're getting established for the 3 years, they'll help with a little payment there to get you by for the loss of income. Other things we could do if we did put it to grass, we could maybe put it in Grassland CRP following the Ducks Unlimited RCPP. Or there's grasslands easements from U.S. Fish and Wildlife. So these things can kind of work with each other. You could start one way and then, you know, end with your U.S. Fish and Wildlife easement or your grassland CRP easement and get some more income off of that grass. So just trying to use all the programs available to get what Wade wants out of the place. So.
I'm Joe Mayrose, the Pheasants Forever biologist there in Coddington County. So my piece in this puzzle was coming with a lot of the CRP knowledge and trying to develop, you know, what practices we may be using for some of these areas, like marginal pasture land, and then some different practices we could tie in to help develop some wildlife habitat as well. So right away, when we were looking through this, I was looking at that kind of riparian area there, and what could we do with that existing area there? So looking again at marginal pastureland CRP and maybe integrating some shrub clump plantings into that site as well to help kind of improve the wildlife value. And then from there, you know, kind of expanding out from there, looking, like Ryan had mentioned, that hillside and that other new breaking, what we could do to get that back into grass and improve the wildlife value there. And then adding food plots as well, where those may go and if they're gonna fit in with a practice or not. And then like Jay had mentioned earlier, you know, talking with Wade, seeing what his long-term goals were. So then I started thinking about how we could set up CRP and still having a grazing option there, and how those processes are gonna fall into place as we work through this.
Okay, my name's Dan Nelson. I'm with the South Dakota Game Fish Parks. And then our role in this is we're kind of focused on habitat, but at the same time, we understand the importance of working land systems. We do have some cost share available. You know, we're probably not the biggest players in the game when it comes to annual payments and things of that nature. So sometimes where we are incorporated is kind of that technical assistance, fill in those voids. If something's not eligible for another program, we might have something that would fit, that would at least get them some cost share to get things established and set up. So when we're walking through this same deal, we do have some options for cost share on fence and water. You know, that might be a complement to equip or something of that nature. So we kind of work through these scenarios, figure out what can't be covered. Is there an option for the Game and Fish to step in and help with that funding? You know, one thing we do have is through kind of the habitat side of things is shrubs and trees. So we have a few different programs through our agency that we don't really have restrictions with cropping history. So we can kind of come in if he's looking for some wildlife added habitat, we can kind of step up and help with that, not only with the designs, but as well as the cost share side of it. Kind of mentioned the habitat side, so that's not just the trees, but something that might include grass, food plots, things of that nature. We have some programs through the department. While it's not going to get you rich, it still helps get those established, gives you that technical advice, helps you get some of that seed. And then this is just kind of the scenario, same thing as we're working through it. You know, fence and water, of course, is going to be important as you're setting things up to set it up properly. So working with all the partners, we start establishing where do you want these habitat corridors, where potentially would you want grass plantings or food plots or things of that nature. As we start developing the trees, you know, we think about things with winter cover and what are you looking for? You're looking for a cedar component. Are you looking for something that is value added in the sense of wildlife? You know, the fruit bearing shrubs and trees that are going to be beneficial for food sources as well as habitat and cover. And then on top of that, we have some programs that help with, exclusion fences. So you can still have these habitat and exclude them from the cattle, so they're going to be successful, still be able to graze and utilize the landscape to a full. And just like anything, when we go into this stuff, we tell guys it's not an all or nothing. You know, there's options. It's not, you don't have to give everything up to get some of the goals accomplished. If you want wildlife, you can take those very marginal acres, put it into a program, or just kind of develop it on your own, maximize what's there, and I guess benefit from what you're hoping to do.
One of the points that we made in that meeting too, we went from an initial cedar conversation and we took it very quickly to
Yeah, okay. So
more friendly.
yep, so that's something too, and I actually looked at a map on this, and I'm going to talk about it in my talk a little bit later with one of our layers. But you know, when it comes to cedars, you really kind of want to look at the landscape. Are they going to be beneficial? Is it going to potentially cause problems down the road? The point that Pete made was very valid, with the sense that in this situation, there's still a lot of benefit to more deciduous trees and shrubs. You know, while it might not have quite the thermal value, you still get the value of creating something with a high stem count that is very valuable and attractive to wildlife. Plus, you have that food source and browse source for wildlife as well.
Thanks, Dan.
I'm next.
Yeah, just a couple, because you get the whole.
I get tomorrow.
You get
Yeah,
tomorrow.
little
Well, we
commercial
wanted to
for
mention
tomorrow
that.
morning. Get up early and come at 8 o'clock. But Anthony Bly, SDSU Extension, and Pete, we do have a program. It's called Every Acre Counts. He knows that. But we focus on precision ag data. The hook is to convince agronomy folks. I'm a fellow agronomist. I don't think we should be embarrassed by that, by the way. To use their precision ag data to identify marginal acres across the landscape with their precision ag data. You know, we're working on a paradigm shift. And when you get to the country where Wade and I and into Iowa and Minnesota, they farm right up to the fence. In fact, the fence are removed and they put up PVC pipes, okay? That's the reality of this. So if we can hook these producers with their precision ag data and show them they're losing money on parts of their field and help them to determine what to do with those areas, that's a win in this paradigm shift. And so we focus on the poor soils, the saline areas, the marginal lands. Too wet, too dry, too salty is basically the simple way to look at that. Is that it, Pete?
That's it, I think, for those
'Kay.
slides, yeah. But that, yeah, if you're not familiar with that, come to Anthony's talk tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. So we have Jesse up here too. Jesse got blindsided by this completely, but he's our Fish and Wildlife Service rep, and a couple people have mentioned that already. So Jesse, like at the end of the day, you know, when all the programs go away, what's the last thing a producer might be able to pursue on this, you know?
At the end of the day, there's the possibility of a conservation easement to make this a long-standing restoration project, or to maintain habitat across the landscape that's critically important to, in the service's eyes, migratory birds, declining species of concern, and your resident wildlife. Maintaining some kind of habitat across the landscape. It's an option. It's not an option for everybody. And that's one thing to drive home. Easements are not for everybody, but it's a personal choice.
So Wade just got the full Monty of opportunity, you know, in a 40-acre piece on this. But Wade, what do you think? Like, what do you think about the service? You know, that's why we're here. Is this a comfortable place to be as a landowner with the level of help and ideas, and maybe too many ideas? But
Oh, absolutely. I think this is where we need to get to. I should have mentioned, my brother and I grew up in Minnesota. We are in the South Branch of the Lac of Parle, and we have worked with easements. One of the things that I have learned is the complexity of the programs, and the goal is to get to be a more simple process and make the options very clear so you don't lose people in that process. And I think this is a great step towards that. So thank you.
all right, well, thank you all very much. We just wanted to give a good positive example of when you start working with people over years, and even, you know, some of us maybe decades already, or at least, you know, the chance of creating your team and having that team serve a landowner, it just kind of grows exponentially. So that's what we wanted to show here today. So thank you.